Today's sitting will begin with press, followed by announcements by the Speaker and statements by ministers. There are several papers to be laid by the Honourable Prime Minister, the Minister for Commerce, Industry, Enterprise Development and Consumer Affairs, the Minister for Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries. According to the order paper or the agenda, there is one motion, and that motion will be tabled by the Honourable Member for Castres East and Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Philip J. Pierre. And this is a motion of no confidence in the leadership of Honourable Alan Chastney, and further calls for the immediate resignation of the Prime Minister. We also have several bills that will be tabled and by the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation and External Affairs, by the Honourable Minister for Infrastructure, Ports, Energy and Labour, Honourable Stevenson King, by the Honourable Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation, Honourable Guy Joseph, by the Honourable Minister for Commerce, Industry, Enterprise Development and Consumer Affairs, Honourable Bradley Felix. Bills will also be tabled by the Honourable Minister for Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, Honourable Dominic Fady, and by the Minister for Equity, Social Justice, Local Government and Empowerment, and that is Honourable Leonard Montoud. As a result of today's motion, a lot of speculation, also expectations are being generated, and of course, just by way of the definition of what a motion of no confidence is, and that is also referred to as a vote of no confidence, and it's really a statement or vote which states that a person in a position of responsibility is no longer deemed to be fit to hold this position. As a parliamentary motion, it demonstrates to the head of state that the elected parliamentarian no longer has confidence in one or more members of the appointed government, and in the case of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister. So what really happens when a vote of no confidence is tabled, as we are going to see during today's sitting? A vote of no confidence lets MPs decide on whether they want the government to continue, and it also has the power to trigger a general election. The motion wording is that this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government. So this is how the motion will be tabled. In some countries, a motion of no confidence can be directed at the government collectively or any individual member, including the Prime Minister. So for today, the opposition will be looking for at least 3 members on the government side to say yes, of course, that they have no confidence in the Prime Minister. So this will generate a lot of discussion, debate, speculation. The atmosphere here seems to be very tense. We have a full house. As a matter of fact, even on the outside, supporters of both sides outside and indicating their choice, their opinion, their views. And we have most of the parliamentarians already seated. And so when the Speaker walks in, it will signal the official start of today's sitting, the first for 2019. So let's see what is on for us today, as we bring to you live the House sitting from the House of Assembly. I could see the Sergeant of Arms just walking in. Not quite ready yet. When he walks in with the mace, he will be followed by the Speaker, who will take us through today's proceedings. The galleries are quite full. Persons have turned out to see for themselves what is really going on today in the House. Thanks for tuning in to the National Television Network as we bring you live coverage of today's sitting.
Let us pray.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fair always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, the fellowship of the Holy Ghost, be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. I beg to announce that since the last sitting of Parliament, His Excellency has been pleased to assent the following bills: International Trust Repeal, International Partnership Repeal, Gaming Control Amendment. Let me take this opportunity, this being our first sitting for the year, to wish every member and St. Lucia at large a prosperous and a very happy 2019. Honorable members, you would look into whether it is to my left or to my right back and to my front in the gallery, that the house is completely, it appears, populated with the citizenry of Blessed Helen of the West. It has always been my desire, and I hope, hopefully, it will continue to be, and that fellow St. Lucians will take the opportunity to visit this honorable house, to see their members, the people that they elect to put in office here, will continue to populate the gallery of our chamber. So, members of the gallery, you should not just be for this moment only that you find yourself in this august chamber of ours, but St. Lucians, I say to you, this is your house, this is your chamber, less populated to see your members at work. Statement by ministers. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give a report on the excise tax on fuel and the justification for excise above $4 on unleaded gas. For the period July 3rd, 2017 to December 9th, 2018. On July 3rd, 2017, a price cap of $12.75 per gallon was implemented on domestic gasoline and diesel prices, meaning that the Cabinet agreed to cap the fuel price at $12.75. And when we do that, the intention is that the $1.50 excise tax, which is going towards the road repairs, would remain untouched. And that if, in fact, that there's any shortfall on that money, it would come out of the $2.50. Despite the policy intention then to also target an excise tax rate of $4 per gallon of gasoline and diesel, the excise tax rates on gasoline were consistently below the $4 from July 3rd, 2017 to December 9th, 2018. During this period of February 2018, and it averaged $3.24 per gallon. So it means that the government had budgeted to be able to recoup $4 in tax, but in fact only recovered $3.24, leaving a shortfall. During the same period, July 3rd, 2017 to December 9th, 2018, while excise tax rates on diesel up to November of 26, 2017 were at $4, the rates since have been below the $4 target, averaging $3.71 per gallon. This was due to the continuation of a policy of maintaining a domestic price cap to keep retail prices stable amidst rising international crude oil prices, which increased by 30% since July 3rd, 2017, to an average rate of US dollars $61.04 per barrel. So in keeping with these developments, the excise tax revenue collection on gasoline and diesel have been notably below approved budget levels. The excise tax revenue generated during period July 17, 2017 to March of 2018 was $49,600,000 compared to $59,900,000 if the excise tax rates were fixed at a target of $4, meaning there was approximately a $9.3 million shortfall in budgeted tax revenue. Similarly, in 2018 and 2019, the excise tax revenue generated for the period of April to December of 2018 amounted to $50,400,000 compared to $58.8 million if the excise tax rate were at $4, resulting in a revenue shortfall thus far this year of $8.4 million. And let me reiterate that this is a revenue shortfall to government for that amount. However, after peaking in October of 2018 to US $76 a barrel, international crude oil prices started to decline as low as $43 on December 24th, 2018, averaging US $48.89 per gallon for the period December 10th to 2018 to January 13th, 2019. This represented a drop of 19.9% compared to the period July 3rd, 2017 to December 9th, 2018. Consequently, the imported CI price for gasoline fell by 8.4% for the reference periods for the price built-up calculation for December 10th, 2018 to January 21st, 2019, from $7.43 to $6.89 per imperial gallon. Notwithstanding this decline, a policy decision taken to keep retail prices, gasoline and diesel unchanged at $13.95 to allow the government to recoup some of the revenue shortfall thus far in this fiscal year of 2018 and 2019. So what that means is that when the price of fuel dropped below the level that would have justified a $13.95 rate, government maintained the $13.95 rate in order to be able to recoup some of the $9 million shortfall this year and $9 million shortfall from the previous year. But we were really trying to just recoup some of the money from then. In addition to that, all expectations have been that the price of fuel is going to go right back up. We see what is taking place in Venezuela, we see what's taking place in the Middle East, and all the pundits indicate they expect that the price is going to go back up. As a result, the excise tax rate on gasoline increased above the $4 to an average of $4.63. So it means that government is actually making $4.63 instead of the legislated $4 amount. And the excise tax on diesel remained below $4, averaging $3.74. So while we were making 65 cents a gallon on gasoline, we were still subsidizing diesel to the tune of 25 cents per gallon. The additional revenue to be collected with the excise tax rate on gasoline above $4 from December 10th, 2018 to February 9th, 2019 is estimated to be $1.5 million. So of the loss that we were already showing of almost 8 million or 9 million, we've already been able to recover $1.5 million. So, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I part wanted to give this report because these are the factual, this is the factual information. And in fact, this is the kind of report that we ought to have been able to provide for the 2015 period. But despite our best efforts and reports from Customs, is that the numbers of the CIF price fact are not there and have not been able to be verified. Although we have a very clear understanding that what took place during 2015 is that the excessive amount of money that was being generated, because in 2015, very clearly, Mr. Speaker, that the amount of money that was being collected was in excess of the amount of the excise tax that was being charged. And the question becomes, where did that extra money go to? And I will be providing a report, hopefully very soon, but I want to make sure that it's a report based on facts. And that the same way that we can provide this report, which I'll make a document of the House, and the same kind of graphs and numbers that we're able to achieve in this report, we're hoping to be able to come to the House and be able to provide a similar report during the 2015 period. I thank you.
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to report on the year 2018 tourism performance to this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia continues its record-breaking performance with tourism arrivals in 2018, Mr. Speaker, reaching unprecedented levels. Mr. Speaker, in the last year, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority reported the largest ever numbers of visitors to our shores. For the first time ever, Mr. Speaker, for the first time ever, Mr. Speaker, we crossed the 1.2 million visitor arrival mark, recording 1,218,294 visits for the year 2019. Before I continue with these figures, Mr. Speaker, let me pause for a moment to extend a heartiest congratulations to the delegation from the St. Lucia Tourism Authority, Mr. Speaker, visiting the Caribbean Hotel Association Marketplace. And they have just picked up, Mr. Speaker, the Caribbean's leading honeymoon destination title, given to St. Lucia 10 times in the last 11 years. Mr. Speaker, I want to dedicate this accolade to the thousands of hospitality employees who have committed their lives to ensuring that our product is world-class. Mr. Speaker, the year 2018 also saw a 10.2 overall increase in visitor arrivals compared to what was recorded in 2017. This, Mr. Speaker, was supported largely by a 13.6% growth in the number of cruise visitors to our shores. Mr. Speaker, we saw 91,000 and 89 more visitors coming to St. Lucia by cruise. Mr. Speaker, we also saw an impressive 26.7% increase in yachting arrivals to our country, which represented a total of 13,399 more visitors that came the previous year. Mr. Speaker, we also continued with very steady stayover arrival numbers. Where we saw, Mr. Speaker, there was a 2.2% increase in stayover arrival numbers. But, Mr. Speaker, this represents an increase of 8,653 visitors for that period. It is worth noting, Mr. Speaker, that here again, for the first time, our country has recorded this many visitors coming by air, 394,780 visitors. Mr. Speaker, while we celebrate these impressive numbers, our government aspires to more than great arrival figures. Mr. Speaker, we endeavor to attain greater economic penetration from the tourism sector and more inclusion of our people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, looking to the future, we saw that there are 30 Genesis-class cruise vessels being built, demanding that ports like ours in Castries step up to the times to accommodate even larger vessels, Mr. Speaker. Last year, we saw the result of our government's decision to invest in the expansion of berth number 1 at Point Seraphine. Over 91,000 more visitors than the previous year were recorded because of this injection. And, Mr. Speaker, our government continues to advance plans to establish in Port Vieux-Fort, Mr. Speaker, very soon we will see the establishment of a world-class facility, Mr. Speaker, being able to accommodate the larger ships that are being built right now in the cruise industry.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the days are gone when ships that came to our shore bring 2,500 passengers. Mr. Speaker, the future demand that we invest in our cruise ports, that we invest in our destination. But, Mr. Speaker, all of this would mean nothing unless we ensure that there's inclusiveness and we ensure we do what is right, Mr. Speaker, to enhance the economic participation of our visitors. Mr. Speaker, as we pursue this quest, Mr. Speaker, to develop tourism, I'm happy to report to this House that we are at a very advanced stage, Mr. Speaker, in establishing the entity called Village Tourism Incorporated. Mr. Speaker, thus far the legislation is at a very advanced stage and we will bring it to the stakeholders very soon for consultation, Mr. Speaker, as we aim to empower our local citizenry to participate at the highest level in the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, we have also established a tourism council, Mr. Speaker, bringing together 17 public and private sector organizations, Mr. Speaker, to improve the governance of tourism. But, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, to increase the revenue yields and to attain a higher economic penetration from the sector. Mr. Speaker, all is going well, and pretty soon the Tourism Council will be established with its own secretariat, and the Council, Mr. Speaker, will be unveiling a national vision for tourism in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Tourism has declared 2019 the year of revenue and inclusiveness. Mr. Speaker, we will be unveiling a series of activities geared towards advancing the revenue performance of our destination. To this end, it is important to know where the current revenue levels are. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report to this Honorable House that we have made significant headway in the establishment of our tourism satellite account. Mr. Speaker, one of the shortcomings of successive administrations have been, Mr. Speaker, the manner in which we have grossly understated the contribution of tourism to our economic and social development in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, with the establishment of the tourism satellite account, not only will we be in a better position to attain better revenue levels, but, Mr. Speaker, we will be in a better position to truly estimate the value of tourism and the contribution it makes to the development of our country and to the economic prosperity of all citizens. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I thank you.
Papers to be laid. Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs and the Public Service.
Speaker, I beg to lay the following statutory instruments in my name. Statutory instrument number 119 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to borrow for capital or recurrent expenditure, services of consultants to conduct implementation labs, workshops, to set up a performance management and delivery unit. Statutory instrument number 120 of 2018, legal profession eligibility, Shivanev Andriy Yegevny Charles, order. Statutory instrument number 122 of 2018, excise tax amendment of Schedule 1, number 18, order. Statutory instrument number 123 of 2018, legal profession eligibility, Jewel Ann Barrow, order. Statutory instrument number 124 of 2018, customs service charge, variation of service charge, Jewel Barrow, order. Statutory instrument number 126 of 2018, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Basel Bank Limited, order. Statutory instrument 127 of 2018, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Coin Floor Limited, order. Statutory instrument number 128 of 2018, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Excellent Holdings Limited, order. Statutory instrument number 129 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister of Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, SLASPA, to finance the Hunora International Airport Redevelopment Project. Statutory instrument number 130 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow from the Bank of St. Lucia Limited for capital expenditure to finance National Sports Infrastructure Strategy and Action Plan and the 2018-2019 budget. Statutory instrument number 131 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow from the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, Taiwan, for capital expenditure to finance the road improvement and maintenance program, the infrastructure repairs to schools, and the housing development program. Statutory instruments 133 of 2018, excise tax amendment of Schedule 1, number 18, order. Statutory instrument number 1 of 2019, Maritime Areas Declaration of Continental Shelf and Exclusive Economic Zone, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, order. Statutory instrument number 2 of 2019, Maritime Areas Declaration of Continental Shelf and Exclusive Economic Zone, St. Lucia and Barbados, order.
Honorable Minister for Commerce, Industry, Enterprise Development and Consumer Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 121 of 2018, Price Control Amendment number 17, order. Statutory Instrument number 132 of 2018, Price Control Amendment number 18, order.
Honorable Minister for Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to lay the following papers laying in my name. Mr. Speaker, Statutory Instrument number 125 of 2018, Tourism Incentives, Fat Bike Adventures, order.
Motions. Honourable Member for Castries East and Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, be it resolved that this Honourable House express its total lack of confidence in the leadership of the Honourable Alan M. Shasley, and be it further resolved that this Honourable House calls for the immediate resignation of the Honourable Alan M. Shasley as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, whereas since the appointment and installation of Honorable Alan M. Shasley as Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation and External Affairs, St. Lucia has been governed in a manner that has undermined our Constitution, its conventions and practices, led to abuse of public office, unreasonable and irrational decision-making, unsustainable fiscal deficits, squandering of the financial resources of the state, and which has resulted in a lack of public trust and confidence in its leadership of the government of St. Lucia. And whereas Section 33 of the Citizenship by Investment Act number 14 of 2015, and hereafter referred to as the Act, establishes the St. Lucia National Economic Fund and provides in Section 43
Honourable Member, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. What is the point of order, sir?
Mr. Speaker, according to Section 35(6) of the Standing Orders, no member of this Honourable House is to be referred to by name in the presentation. And I see a motion being tabled before this Honourable House indicating the name of a member of this Honourable House, which is contrary to the standing orders. And so, Mr. Speaker, I believe this renders this motion unacceptable in the Honourable House, because if the motion is going to make reference
Mr. Speaker,
to the person by name.
Point of order. I think he's seated point of order.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, he stood on a point of order. I'm allowing him to make that submission to me.
So, Mr. Speaker, contrary to the Standing Order 35(6), I wish to point out that this motion in the name of the Honourable Member for Mikud South is not in keeping with the Standing Orders. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Castries South East. Though I may agree that under Section 45(6) it refers to no member shall refer to any other member by name, but the nature of this motion requires the nature of it, which is a motion on the face of it, is a motion of no confidence. Then I cannot accept that submission, because the only way that the Leader of the Opposition can be rightly so to put the motion in that particular context, he would have to refer to the member and who is or happens to be the Prime Minister of this country. Okay? So on that basis, I will so allow the Leader of the Opposition to so continue. Continue, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker,
and whereas the Prime Minister has...
Just hold on. Are you standing again on the point of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The same point of order, or you...
Yes, I'm continuing on my point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I thought you did. And I thought I ruled on the point of order. It is referring to 45(6).
Yes. Mr. Speaker.
What addition can you add?
Okay.
Let me hear you quickly.
The Constitution under Section 60 and subsection 6 highlights that a no confidence motion, because Mr. Speaker, you are explaining that he is putting forward a no confidence motion. The no confidence motion that is allowed is on the government, not on an individual. And I am a bit concerned, Mr. Speaker, that a motion is being moved that is contrary to the Constitution, which highlights that I have no problems with debating a no confidence motion on the government. But the issue is the no confidence motion being put here is put on an individual and not in the government. And I would love to see, Mr. Speaker, where in the standing orders or the Constitution that there is that authority to move a motion of no confidence in an individual in this parliament.
No, I list. That's my. Is that? No, I think I have my copy. You know? Yeah, so you could hold on to this. Yeah, hold on to this. Yeah. Honorable members. Yeah. In a previous life, I was referred to not as the speaker, but as your worship, meaning I was magistrate. And the Lady Justice at that time, well, still do, but I'm referring to when I was supposed to be blind, was not supposed to see anything. But the nature of the life that we live, I am also at that time as magistrate, you're not supposed to know the evidence beforehand. But even then, sometimes the way the world revolve, you hear things because you're human. It comes into your ears. And I've always said, and I have my son here, is somewhere in the gallery, and I've said to him and to everybody, biology dictates that you see, not by light leaving your eyes to the object, but light from the object coming into your eyes. That's how we see. I say all this to say that I've heard over the last 2.5 weeks, I've listened, I've ignored. And though some may say that the role of the speaker is supposed to be this way or that way, I say to you, when I, Andy Daniel, sit in this chair as speaker, I aim to be fair to members of this honorable house. Now, let's get to the substantive motion. Honorable Member for Castries Southeast. Before and on the onset, and I will give you my ruling, I'll give you the ruling, and then I'll move on to explain. There is nothing unconstitutional about this motion being in the name of the Honorable Prime Minister, or in his office, or in any other minister or member sitting around this table. There's nothing unconstitutional about that. Reference is being made to various sections in the Constitution of this country, in particularly Section 66 of the Constitution. Reference is also made somewhere, I believe, in Section 54 and some other provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution under Section 53 states, subject to the provision of this Constitution, the Senate and the House may each regulate its own procedure and may in particular make rules for the orderly conduct of its own proceedings. This authority is thus summarized in our standing orders. The authority to make our rules on any matter that we so deem. Section 21 of our standing order says, subject to Section 48 of the St. Lucia Constitution Order in Council 1978, and to these standing orders, any member may propose by way of motion any matter for debate in this honorable House. It never said the government side or the opposition side. Any member may propose by way of motion any matter for subject in this House. Any member. Now, let me go one step further. The idea that a member should not be a single member on the government side, a minister that is, should not be the subject of a motion of no confidence is wrong. And our court, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, have so ruled. The case that we keep referring to, and we keep referring to some jurisdiction for something, but the other things we don't accept it from the jurisdiction. Can you circulate, please? I will circulate to you now the case of Honorable Mark Brantley, Leader of the Opposition, and Honorable Curtis Martin. Is a case from the Court of Appeal arising from the jurisdiction of Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. So, even before I get to that point I want to make, let me make in reference to a case arising out of our sister neighbor country of Guyana, Attorney General of Guyana and David Granger and others, which involve a case of no confidence. And I read on page 59, paragraph 136. And I'm quoting, this case involved a vote of no confidence against the Home Affairs Minister of Guyana, Mr. Clement Roy, which was brought and passed by the opposition parties in the House, who held a combined majority in Parliament. By this resolution, the opposition resolved that they had no confidence in him and thereafter sought to prevent him from speaking as long as he remained the Home Affairs Minister. The Attorney General moved to the High Court, seeking a number of orders, including declarations that the opposition had no right to bring and have debated a motion of no confidence in a single member of Parliament, and that their attempt to muzzle the minister for speaking was in breach of his constitutional right to represent the people. The Chief Justice refused the motion and allowed the motion to proceed on the grounds holding inter alia, meaning among other things, that there was no constitutional prohibition against a no confidence vote against a single member of Parliament. Now, the other argument, and let me just clarify it here now. The other argument deals with the nature of the motion. Let me just deal with it one time. So I'm reading from the same case, on page 45, not page 45, page 23, paragraph 45, and just let me quote again. When a request is made in the prescribed manner for a motion to be placed on the order paper, the Speaker, for the purpose of determining whether and what kind of priority to accord the motion, is tasked with making a determination whether the particular motion is of a kind it proclaimed itself to be. If, on its face, it is expressed to be a motion of no confidence, the Speaker ought not to engage in making pronouncements whether it has met a particular threshold or not, or whether or not he is satisfied that it is that kind of motion. He should be guided by what it proclaims itself to be, and I'm including words there, motion of no confidence, treat it as that kind of motion, and place it before the assembly for them, meaning on the debates and the votes, to make those final determinations as to its nature. If you want me to go one step further, out of New Zealand, in McGee Parliamentary Practice in New Zealand, 4th edition, just off the shelf. It's a small quotation, just for your information. Thus, a motion that the House lacks confidence in the government would, for example, suffice. It was also accepted that a motion of no confidence in the Premier, meaning the Prime Minister, was sufficient to express no confidence in the government, but not a motion of no confidence in any other individual ministers. So, distinction is being made between motions of confidence in the government, motion of confidence in the Prime Minister, and motion of no confidence in an individual minister. So my ruling, and I've circulated the judgment, again, I've circulated the judgment, a judgment by Justice Rahami. Let me make sure I pronounce the name correctly. Darshan Ramhani, resident judge of St. Kitts and Nevis at the time, in the case claim number SKB HCV 2014-0090 in our Supreme Court, Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, matter of Honorable Mark Brantley et al., then leader of the opposition, and Honorable Curtis Martin, then Speaker of the National Assembly. Let me also give the citation for the record's sake. The case of Attorney General versus David Granger and others, it is CM number 94 of 2012, a case in the court, the High Court of Guyana. So, honorable members, I've circulated this particular judgment. There are other judgments by our own Supreme Court. There are also judgments in the Commonwealth of South Africa. There are judgments in Australia. There are judgments in our own sister island of Dominica. I am saying to you, and I am so ruling, there is nothing, and I repeat, there is nothing unconstitutional about this motion by the leader of the opposition being solely in the name of the Prime Minister. I so rule. Proceed, Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. unreasonable and irrational decision-making, unsustainable fiscal deficits, squandering of the financial resources of the state, and which have resulted in a lack of public trust and confidence in the leadership of the government of St. Lucia. And whereas the Prime Minister has in the past 2 years refused to lay in Parliament for information, debate and approval a statement on the purposes of the funds in the St. Lucia National Economic Fund, despite the pleas of the opposition and the public. And whereas the Prime Minister, by his failure to do, has acted unlawfully in breach and in defiance of the Act, thereby contributing to growing suspicions about the integrity and transparency of the Citizens by Investment Program, evidenced by the blacklisting of St. Lucia by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. And whereas the Prime Minister, despite his assigned portfolios for finance, economic growth and job creation, has failed to create sustainable employment, especially among young people. And whereas the Prime Minister has recklessly and irresponsibly allowed the economy to descend into unsustainable deficits and to incur new debt to finance such deficits. And whereas the Prime Minister inherited an economy which debt to GDP ratio was rebased, effectively reducing the public debt ratios by 7 points, and by his policies as Minister for Finance, engaged in new and increased borrowing, thus wiping away the benefit of rebasing and increasing the public debt to an unsustainable level. And whereas, contrary to the assertion by the Prime Minister, and the reduction of VAT to 12.5% would have resulted in reductions in the prices of grocery items, the prices continue to rise uncontrollable. And whereas the Prime Minister has been reckless in the financial resources of the country, evidenced by granting by direct purchase a contract to the Parker Company of the United States of $12 million US, or the equivalent of $32.4 million, ostensibly prepared for sports development.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you need to, at the same time, keep one eye
And there is a
open.
point of order you sit and allow it.
Yes. Honorable Member for Grizzly, let me hear you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to point of order 35.3. The matter just having been raised is a matter that has been debated in this Honorable House.
And deemed to be unfactual when the opposition could.
Honorable Member, Grossly, I am aware of your submission. Because the Honorable Member is putting the motion, I am not yet going to roll on that. But if I do take note that a matter that has been debated in this Honorable House cannot be revived in the sense that you cannot reopen the debate on the particular motion or bill. But at this present time, he's putting a motion before this House. I don't see any reason to stop him. Very well, continue.
And whereas the Prime Minister, by his amateurish and inept handling of the range development project, caused the developers to claim a breach of contract for which the government has had to pay the developers over US $20 million. And whereas
Mr. Speaker, I stand
the Prime Minister has breached his promises to the electorate.
Honorable members,
Yes.
you will surely get an opportunity. Allow the member to put the motion.
Mr. Speaker, but as we go through the motion, there are a lot of the clauses that are erroneous. What is submitted here, Mr. Speaker, is a specific fact that the government has paid $20 million. Mr. Speaker, he has to withdraw.
Honorable Member,
Yeah.
I am not dealing with here with the merit or the truth of it. He's putting a matter as to a matter of fact. He believes that is the fact. You will surely get your honorable members in the gallery. You will surely get your opportunity. So challenge the honorable member.
Yes.
But allow him to put the motion, and then I will give you that opportunity, sir. Very well.
Thank
Very
you,
well.
Mr. Speaker, but what we have here is a statement of fact that
That's,
20 million US
yes,
is paid.
yes.
So it's not,
listen to this, listen to
something
this.
that is
Listen to
conjectural.
this.
Yes.
It is a fact that he is putting a fact to this parliament.
But it is misleading.
No.
'Cause he
Listen to
cannot
me,
support
listen
that.
to me, honorable member.
Yes.
You will get the opportunity to put it to him that he is very well is misleading the House. So for the time being, allow him to put the motion, because unless the motion is before this House,
Yes.
I cannot rule.
Yeah.
So allow him to put the motion, and then
Mr.
thereafter.
Speaker, as I said, I submitted that he's misleading the House.
Very well, you'll so prove to me. Continue, honorable leader.
And whereas the Prime Minister has breached his promises to the electorate to uncover the hidden tax of 680 allegedly imposed by the former government on every gallon of gas, and to reduce the price of gas by the said amounts, and to reduce vehicle licenses by 50%. And whereas, by willfully, recklessly, and deliberately stopping all work on the reconstruction of St. Jude's Hospital, the Prime Minister has caused further deterioration in the provision of healthcare services to the people of St. Lucia generally, and the residents of the South in particular. And whereas the Prime Minister has sought to privatize the Owen King European Union Hospital without a formal bidding process, and has refused and or failed to provide clear, unambiguous information about plans to improve external private sector entities in the operation and management of the OKEU hospital, despite protests from healthcare practitioners, citizens, and the opposition. And whereas, by the above-mentioned actions, the Prime Minister has plunged the provision of healthcare services into a deep crisis, creating rising uncertainty, causing a breakdown of morale among healthcare practitioners, and encouraged an accelerated exodus of trained nurses from the healthcare system. And whereas, by the cumulative effect of these actions by the Prime Minister, the people of St. Lucia are now the recipients of substandard healthcare services. And whereas the Prime Minister has adopted an approach to governance of the country which many think are unstatesmanlike, especially to those who do not believe in his political philosophy. And whereas the Prime Minister has treated the citizens of St. Lucia, especially those who have expressed concerns about his plans, policies, and ideas, with such derision, disrespect, contempt, and ridicule.
Honorable Speaker, I stand on the
And
point of
whereas
order.
the Prime Minister
Stand on the point of order, honorable member. Yes, let me hear you.
Point of order 35.5, which deals with imputing improper motives. And Mr. Speaker, I have heard your ruling on previous motions, on previous submissions. But Mr. Speaker, I respectfully accept that you preside over this Honorable House. But I am familiar with the rules of this Honorable House, and I would like to believe that I'm part of an assembly that observes those rules. Now, Mr. Speaker, if I may read, just for my own edification, what 35.5...
No, honorable
Mr.
member.
Speaker,
No, honorable member. Let me just say something here. I'm not going to stop you, but let me say something here. You cannot have what we call have your cake and eat it at the same time. So if you're standing on the point of order, you stand on the point of order. If you're standing on the point of elucidation, that's a different thing. So you cannot stand on the point of order and then want clarification for yourself.
I'm so guided, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I stand on point of order 35.5, which indicates that you cannot impute improper motive, and that has been done on several occasions. Now, this standing order, Mr. Speaker, does not indicate that you can do it when a motion is being presented. It simply says it cannot be done. And that being done is a breach of the standing orders of this Honorable House.
I so accept that you're raising 45.5. I know that we may take issue with some words used, such words in these standing orders as before me, and the particular clause that the honorable member is so reading, I've had cause in the past to look at it, and I've allowed it to go through, because to me the meaning then did not raise to the level where I believe that the honorable member, so using the words then, meant anything aggravating at the time. So for the time being, since he's put in the motion, I so allow it. If the members so come back and make a pronouncement or using the same words which elevate it to my mind to a matter beyond what I believe the words here means, then I will so rule in favor according to 45.5. Proceed.
Speaker, if I may, I just want to indicate to you that while I cited the last comment that was made, it was previously done in the paragraph which reads, whereas by the above-mentioned actions of the Prime Minister, he has plunged the healthcare services into deep crisis, and it further said that he encouraged and accelerated an exodus of trained nurses from the healthcare system.
I will
that is clearly and definitely imputing improper motives.
I will so note. Continue, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. And honorable members, before you continue, honorable member, unless the member put the motion before the House, we are not joined yet at the hip, if you understand what I mean. Continue, honorable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister, in a deliberate and calculated act, removed the subvention of the St. Lucia National Trust because officials of the trust opposed the establishment of a dolphin park on Pigeon Island, a property leased to the National Trust for 99 years. And whereas, as a consequence of its removed subvention, the National Trust was compelled to close the Derek Walcott House and theatre on Chaussee Road to the public and to visitors, in the process displaying a callous disregard to our Nobel laureate. And whereas the Prime Minister agreed to the dismissal of NICE workers on the primary premise that more than 90% of them were supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party. And whereas these acts reflect actions of the Prime...
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I hate to interrupt you, but it must be done. Honorable Member for Castro Central.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order 35.5, notwithstanding what you have said, I wish to raise the point that the member is imputing improper motives to a member of this honorable House. In the first instance, Mr. Speaker, repeatedly it has been corrected in this honorable House that there was no dismissal of NICE workers, that the contracts came to a natural end. And this has been said here in this honorable House. And again, further, Mr. Speaker, it is wrong to impute improper motives against the rules of the House to suggest that the primary premise upon which this was done was that they were supporters of the Labour Party. And Mr. Speaker, if you may indulge me further, the whole reason for the rules of the House allowing interruptions on points of order is that they are so serious that they should not be allowed to continue. To impute improper motives to a member, it is so serious that the rules of the House allow the interruption so that the member does not persist in doing it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Again, honorable member, I so note your point of order. My ruling, I will so stand by it. When this matter is before the House, yourself and members who believe that 45.5 is being breached will so take up this issue. Further, let me say to you, for purposes of the record, in terms of what the record will reflect at the end of the day, you surely have a right at a particular point so that this resolution may very well be amended. Continue, Honorable Leader.
And whereas these acts reflect the action of a Prime Minister who lacks respect, sympathy, and appreciation of the history, culture, traditions, and patrimony of St. Lucia and its people. And whereas the Prime Minister places little or no value on education, has adopted policies inimical to the interest and benefit of teachers and students in the education system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Honorable House express its total lack of confidence in the leadership of Honorable Alan M. Shasley, and be it further resolved that this Honorable House calls for the immediate resignation of the Honorable Alan M. Shasley as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to second the motion.
Honorable members, there is no need to. It's just that the honorable leader of the opposition, you may continue because you have a certain time limit to make your presentation. Are you indicating that you're free for your presentation?
No.
Well then.
Mr. Speaker, this morning's motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister is not a political gimmick intended to embarrass the Prime Minister, nor is it a personal attack on him. Instead, it's a watershed moment for members of this House to answer the question: should the member from Miku South be allowed to lead this country for the balance of this Parliament, given his dismal performance to date, a performance that's been uncaring, reckless, and irresponsible? It is also called to members of this House to examine the evidence before them and to do so with the best interests of the country in mind. In particular, for the members opposite to be men and women of integrity by declaring publicly what they say privately about the Prime Minister's dismal performance and to place country above self. This is the challenge before members today. I shall make the case against this Prime Minister as an uncaring, reckless, and irresponsible leader, and that members withdraw their support for the member as the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, this debate is not about the perceived misdeeds of the St. Lucia Labour Party. It is not about the Ramsahori report. The people of St. Lucia passed verdict on the St. Lucia Labour Party on the 6th of April 2016. 6th of June. Let us therefore not be distracted by any attempts to shift the focus of attention about this sitting. This is about the performance of the Prime Minister to date, and for members to seize the opportunity to stem the destruction he is causing to our country by voting yes in support of the no confidence motion. The Prime Minister has from time to time demonstrated that his words cannot be trusted. In his first budget address as Minister of Finance, he declared the fiscal year the year of execution. Little did he realize the damage that was to follow. The Prime Minister executed an approved and ready-to-go redevelopment project of the Ivanora International Airport. He executed the improved plans for the Grocery to Castries Highway. He executed the plans for the Soufriere Square. He executed the Administrative Center project in Vieux Fort. He executed the rehabilitation of the Millennium Highway. He executed the North-South Link Road. He executed improvement works at the Choiseul Secondary School. He executed the CDB-funded project for the retrofitting of sodium street lights to LED solar lights, thereby saving energy. He heartlessly executed the NICE program because, to his mind, 90% of the workers were SLP supporters. He executed the Deputy Speaker. He executed the subvention to the National Trust. He executed Radio St. Lucia. He executed the St. Lucia Tourist Board. He executed the Dennery Wind Farm project. He executed the Distress Fund. He executed the Jazz Festival. He executed the school laptop program. And unpatriotically, he executed the Derrick Walcott project. Mr. Speaker, this was the year of mass casualty, with project after project being executed. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, with the effects of mass casualty still hurting the nation, he uncaringly moved into his second budget address and dubbed the fiscal year as the year of confidence. Ironically, it was that year we were blacklisted by the EU. Lenders were unwilling to roll over government bonds when they became due, forcing the government to turn to the NIC funds to avoid defaulting. The United States State Department began questioning our CIP program. He withdrew his confidence in our first female and distinguished head of state. He withdrew his confidence in local businesses for Ojo Labs and damaged public confidence and fair play by giving millions of dollars to a private profit-making venture, CHTTI. Perhaps the most disturbing show of a lack of confidence in the people of St. Lucia to develop their lands, he leased 1,000 acres of land, some of it at 99 cents to a foreign friend. And as if this was not enough generosity, he allowed the foreign friend to sell our passports and to use the proceeds to develop the land. Meanwhile, he increased the price of gas by increasing the excise tax from $2.50 to $4 per gallon.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
Making life increasingly difficult for fishermen and motorists.
Honorable Member Sozel.
Speaker, I just need to find out, is it the time that you can make a ruling as it relates to what the honorable member is saying?
You're asking a question. Make the point of order.
Well, the point of order is 35.5, imputing improper motives. The honorable member is indicating that the permission has been given for a certain person to be selling our passports. Honorable Speaker, this is erroneous and incorrect, and I would like the statement withdrawn.
That's the extent here.
No, and it's not a factual statement, Honorable Speaker. The facts are there for everybody to see. We cannot allow the honorable member to...
Honorable members, let's not cross this line this morning so early. Yes, honorable member, is it you saying that the honorable leader of the opposition, by saying that permission is given to someone to sell the passport, is the violation here? No, that's all right. I'm speaking to you. Is that what you say?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
Very well.
He is misleading the House and the people of St. Lucia.
Honorable member, leader of the opposition. Whatever way you may want to rephrase it, I understand what the member is saying. No, whatever way you may rephrase it. But listen to me, honorable members, we're not going down this road this morning. Leader of the opposition. Let me say to you, maybe the connotation that permission has been given to somebody to sell our passport. So it may be what is causing the problem. To say he's being given the authority to sell it may not be the right tone, may not be the right words you should use. So you may rephrase that.
Mr. Speaker?
You could say, I think no, remain standing. I think you know what you want to say, so, and I think you're fully capable of doing it. So,
Mr. Speaker, based on a document that is made a document of the House, in that document it was said that a developer will be allowed to sell passports under the CIP to fund a horse racing track in Beaufort. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Leader, it's the words. It's the words. If you're going to tell me that the document says that, if you could highlight that document, I'll be more than pleased with that. But on the surface, to just say somebody was given permission to just sell the passport, that is the problem. So that's why I'm saying to you that you could say the same thing by not saying using the words.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to get involved in this helter-skelter fear that's going on there, you know. What I'm saying to you is that...
Mr. Speaker, I rise on the point of order.
Honorable Leader for it.
Yes, sir. I rise on the point
Honorable
of order,
Member for Sir Ancillary, sorry.
Yeah.
I have made the ruling at a particular point. I've asked the leader of the opposition, either he's going to rephrase that. If he wants to make reference to that issue, just rephrase it and don't say members. Somebody was given permission to sell our passport. I know the connotation in the air. So that's all I'm
Thank you,
saying.
Mr.
I'm not
Speaker.
going
Mr.
further
Speaker,
on that.
thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to go ahead. Somebody was given permission under the CIP program to exchange our passports for money to fund a horse racing track.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order based on that fact that has been submitted by the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, if you check the list of CIP-approved properties and
Honourable
developments in
Member,
St. Lucia,
now that
see,
you've stood,
yes, sir.
and I've said it before, I do not expect you to make reference to our standing orders, but at least you need to tell me what's the point of order.
The Honourable Member is misleading the House.
Okay.
He has all day. And so, Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order that he's misleading the House to suggest that someone has been approved to sell passports to build a horse
Now
racing
you just
track.
crossed the line yourself. I have
How did I
said
cross
to
the line?
him, I have said to him to
Yes.
take back those words and rephrase what he has
No, but
said.
he went on to say, Mr. Speaker, he
Yes.
added to the statement, Mr. Speaker, and hear me carefully. He has added to the statement, and he has now laid a very specific statement suggesting that someone has been approved to sell passports to build a horse racing track. And Mr. Speaker, you can check the list for yourself of the CIP-approved properties, and you will see that no developer has been granted CIP approval by the CIP board to construct a horse racing track. He has been misleading the House all day without any facts.
Yeah. Honourable Leader, Honourable Member for Ancillary Canneries. Honourable Member for Ancillary Canneries, I so like the way you said it. You see, Honourable Members, I am supposed to be a referee, an umpire, you know, not somebody to take part in into the debate itself. But a violation of the license, driving license. So I'm ruling on what you're saying. A violation of the driver's license. The burden is on the holder of the driver's license to simply prove to the court that he has a driver's license. Okay? So I'm going to address the Leader of the Opposition. But if you're saying, Honourable Member, that this is not so the best way to do it, and to show that the Leader of the Opposition is misleading the House, and for you to call on the House to so act, is to table the exact document you're referring to this Honourable House, and action can follow thereafter. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I have ruled before, do not, and I know you're capable of doing it, express the same point without indicating that someone was given permission to sell our passport. Okay? Very well.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want the show to go on. I will not get derailed. I will not get derailed. I withdraw that he wasn't given permission to sell passports. Mr. Speaker, that was the year of confidence. Meanwhile, he increased the price of gas by increasing the fuel excise tax from $2.50 to $4 per gallon, making life increasingly difficult for fishermen and motorists. Mr. Speaker, that was the year of confidence. This year, Mr. Speaker, has been proclaimed the year of implementation. So what is in store? Well, with the experience of the last 2 years, there is no hope of any meaningful implementation. With so many ACTS projects and loss of public confidence in the Prime Minister, the new worry is the alarming growing increase in the country's public debts. Much of that debt increase has been unnecessary and irresponsible, used to finance highly dubious projects, a $14 million consultancy to display glitzy renderings and pictures of unfunded projects, and a horse racing track that will bear little fruit, if any. Banana farmers are facing further doom and gloom because no bananas will be shipped to France, as farmers were made to believe. Meanwhile, the UK market is becoming even more challenging. With so many missteps, there is little hope of improvement in our healthcare system. St. Jude Hospital remains a source of foreign interest, and the Prime Minister is hell-bent on handing it over to foreign private concerns for profits. This year of implementation is filled with apprehension, with little enthusiasm. Never mind all the promises. The Prime Minister's words has long vanished, even among his own, and for good reason. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has failed miserably in the management of the economy, and in particularly his management of the country's finances. The promise of ching-ching in the pockets of the people is now a joke. In fact, ching-ching has changed into empowerment. As a result of the reckless policies of the Minister of Finance, the primary deficit is worsening from 0.4% of GDP in 2018 to a projected 7.5% of GDP in 2019. This is after being inherited a surplus position of 1.8% of GDP in 2016. Beyond the primary deficit, the overall deficit position is expected to be 3.5% of GDP in 2018 and 5.1% in 2019. Mr. Speaker, in simple terms, the government is spending more money than it is collecting in revenue, a situation that is clearly not sustainable. Nevertheless, the recklessness continues. The excessive increase in public expenditure is taking place while public sector workers, policemen, nurses and teachers cannot get a pay increase, and some are being sent home. Nurses, night workers and step workers are also being sent home. The question remains, where did the money go, and who are the beneficiaries of the increased spending? Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance's answer to the fiscal problem he has created is to embark upon an unprecedented and an irresponsible level of borrowing that will place the future of St. Lucia in jeopardy. Since assuming office, the Minister of Finance has borrowed $1.2 billion, 33% of our public debt, with nothing to show. There have been no new capital investments, no new major roads, highways or schools, and St. Jude Hospital remains unfinished. As a former Minister of Finance, the member for Castries North should have reined in his Prime Minister by now. Why are you sitting there and doing nothing? Today is your last chance to place your country above self. The people of St. Lucia are waiting to see how you'll choose to be remembered as a parliamentary representative who sat in the cabinet and allowed the Prime Minister to increase the national debt by $1.2 billion in 1 year. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister should know that our island does not exist in isolation, nor does our economy. We must learn from the lessons of the past and the experiences of the other islands, lest we fall into the hands of the IMF. Economic disaster and hardship awaits our people if we do not stop this Prime Minister and Minister of Finance from his recklessness and irresponsible management of the economy of the country. Mr. Speaker, all the islands of the region that have had the misfortune of either an imposed IMF structural adjustment program or homegrown adjustment program have been on the account of excessive borrowing, which has brought much pain and suffering to the citizens. All the islands who have had the experience of an IMF program is because of excessive borrowing. Mr. Speaker, when a country finds itself in this situation, the young people suffer. With youth unemployment already unacceptably high, it will only get worse. The working population and the business sector will be called upon to pay more taxes, social and health services will become easy targets for cuts in government expenditure. The country's infrastructure, its schools, its hospitals, its health centers, its roads, and its public buildings will begin to get worse, even faster than they are now. High levels of debt cripples a country and its people. High levels of debt cripples a country and its people. Mr. Speaker, we need not look too far for examples of the impact of excessive debt on a country. In our Caribbean region, we see countries like Barbados. Barbados was considered the gem of the Antilles. Countries like Barbados having to send thousands of public servants home, increased taxes, and pensioners having reduced savings because of the high level of debt in the economy of Barbados. A country's debt should be every citizen's business. Mr. Speaker, it is only an uncaring Minister of Finance that would turn a blind eye to the obvious negative consequences of high debt on the current and future citizens of this country. Mr. Speaker, debt suffocates a country. It places an unnecessary burden on the future generation and inhibits prospects for growth and development. I cannot but labor the point that we are already in dangerous economic waters and we need to get out. The level of borrowing in this country is unsustainable. The Prime Minister and Minister of Finance should be relieved of his duties if we are to avert financial disaster. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, as the guardian of state funds, has done a pathetic job of ensuring transparency and accountability in the awarding of public contracts, and in so doing, has denied the citizens of this country a fair chance of getting value for money. I refer to only one of the untendered projects, a $42 million contract awarded without tendering to a member of the now infamous favored category of persons, friends, family, friends, and foreigners. This type of behavior obviously robs the business people of this country a fair chance of making a living, whether they are contractors, consultants, engineers, or suppliers of construction supplies. Moreover, it invariably robs the taxpayer of the chance of securing value for money, and damaging, it engenders a lack of confidence in the system because it lacks transparency, accountability, and efficiency, and it leaves government ministers open to bribery and corruption, since they are the ones who ultimately decide who is contracted. Mr. Speaker, the awarding of contracts without tendering is widespread and has become the norm rather the exception in this government, with the Prime Minister endorsing every untendered contract. The major ones as follows: 13 million for consultancy, 14 million for a road in Vieux-Fort to facilitate a private investor, 42 million for the Parker Company, 19 million for Fresh Start, 270 million for the construction of a terminal building at Iwanora Airport, and another 135 million for road construction. All of these to be financed by loans and none of them tendered. Mr. Speaker, the sad reality of this level of debt, of these untendered projects, is that it is left not for us to carry, but for our children.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, Mr. Prime Minister.
It was difficult for me to rise, Mr. Speaker, because I certainly did not want to interrupt the flow of reading by the Leader of the Opposition. But the member on the opposite side is imputing wrong motives. As indicated previously by one of the other parliamentarians who stood up, we debated the issue with regards to the $32 million contract. And in the $32 million contract, Mr. Speaker, $2 million went to Parker in order to manage the project. Parker's responsibility is to
Honorable,
put the remaining amount
Honorable
of money
Prime
out
Minister,
to
not
bid.
wanting to stop you, but the leader of the opposition did not spell out which contract. He simply said a $42 million contract was given.
But we know who he's making reference to, because that's the only $32 million. But he's also, and he said it in the motion, and he said in the motion, and he also, Mr. Speaker, he's also indicated that it went out, the $32 million without tender. The bill that was passed in this House, Mr. Speaker, was clearly showed that Parker was receiving $2 million for consultancy to assist in the implementation of the project. And the remaining amount of money, which was $9 million, was to be tendered, and that they were managing the tendering process. So I just wanted that it be clarified, and that he should not impute these things on this side.
Good. Honorable Member, Leader of the Opposition, if I understand the submission so made by the Prime Minister, is that the entire 42 million was not granted without tendering. That part thereof was or is open to the tendering process. So no. So do not refer to the entire 42 million as having been given without tendering. Do you understand do you understand, Honorable Leader of the Opposition? He's indicating that 9 million of the 42 is open, or was open, or is open to the tendering. So it's not the entire $42 million.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I've heard. All these are expected to be financed by loans. Mr. Speaker, the sad reality of this level of debt is that it will be left not for us to carry, but our children and their children, those yet unborn. And it is done with little transparency and accountability. It is that uncaring nature of the Prime Minister that is being demonstrated ever so often. He just does not care. What are we to tell our children when we are asked about the burden of debt being placed upon them with the process of granting contracts that has not been transparent and that have been untendered? Mr. Speaker, I come to some specific promises made by the Prime Minister to the electorate and what has happened to the reduced VAT with a view to its complete removal. The reduced VAT with a view to its complete removal. He tinkered at the rate of VAT and reduced it by 2.5%. But this has had no positive impact on the average household because it was too small and therefore did not have the desired impact on consumer prices. In fact, the price of food went up. The price of food went up. The price of grocery items went up after he reduced VAT. And as he attempted to recover lost government revenue by increasing, the price of fuel with an increase in the fuel excise tax from $2.50 to $4 per gallon, an increase of 60%. Now, there is no further reference being made to the removal of VAT. When last have you heard about the removal of VAT, as was demonstrated and clearly said in the United Workers' Party manifesto? The elimination of VAT. When last have we heard that? Because the truth is, they can't deliver on the removal of VAT that they promised the electorate in 2016. Mr. Speaker, let us look further at what the Prime Minister has promised. But before I do, allow me to say that when a Prime Minister speaks, his words must mean something, because he is better placed than most to know what is likely to happen or not to happen. Since 2016, the Prime Minister had made several declarations about new investments, none of which have materialized. He promised the creation of 4,320 tourism-related jobs. He promised Cocoa Bay Hotel expansion, 720 jobs. He promised Fairmont Hotel in South Bishop Choiseul, 400 jobs. He promised the Creole Hilton Hotel, 500 jobs. He promised Honeymoon Bay Resort in Canel, 105 jobs. He promised Black Bay Hotel, 700 jobs. He promised Sanders Hotel, 950 jobs. He promised DSH, 800 jobs. And now he's promised the Hyatt another 1,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, not one of these investments have been realized, dashing the hopes of the young unemployed who are seeking employment. Mr. Speaker, it is only if you are reckless and the irresponsible ministry of the Prime Minister that has him making such many empty statements and repeating them and promises, only because he cannot wait for the moment when he can realistically make credible statements. It is no wonder, Mr. Speaker, that many people are saying when the Prime Minister opens his mouth, you must listen carefully to what he says. Mr. Speaker, I will be pleased to know what's the situation regarding CHTTI, a private firm that the Prime Minister sanctioned as the beneficiary of thousands of dollars from the taxpayers of Taiwan, a firm that is registered in the name of the wife of one of his ministers, currently sitting on this chamber, who really benefited from this donation from the Taiwanese government. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has shown poor judgment on this issue, and by his actions, it could be said that he is endorsing...
On a point of order. Mr. Speaker.
Here's the point of order.
I would like the member for Castries East to show the documents that there is a company registered in the... Because you cannot be imputing some allegation towards members of this this honorable house, and to say that a company is registered in the name. There's a company registry, and the member should have his information to back up what he's saying. And if he doesn't have it, he should withdraw that statement, because that is imputing something in relation to every member of this honorable house who has a wife. Yes, it is implicating every honorable member who has a wife. And it cannot be, Mr. Speaker, that these reckless statements can be made and can go unchallenged. The company registry is there. You bring the documents or you withdraw the statement.
I so agree, honorable member. Leader of the opposition, do you have anything to substantiate that CHTTI was in fact or is in fact a registered company in the name of one of the members, the wife of one of the members here? And not based on, do you have it? Because it's really and truly crossing that line. Further, I'm not sure if you say you have it, so very well you may want to produce it. But I'm saying if you're sure you'll not be able to produce it, I would rather you so withdraw it now instead of doing, I'm calling you back to do it later. So.
And Mr. Speaker, when I show it, can I take it back? when I show the document, can I?
Yes,
I'll
you will
now.
Very well, and you'll present it. You'll present it.
And when I show the document,
you'll also present it.
Agreed.
Honorable Prime Minister.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, the member indicated that the reduction in the VAT rate, in fact, did not reflect in the price of goods. And I just want to read from the Economic and Social Review of 2017, page 47. And it says that, in addition, St. Lucia's major trading partner countries, namely the United States, United Kingdom, and Japan, recorded inflation rates of 2.1%, 2.6%, and 0.4% respectively. As a result of this, imported inflation upticks were registered in some components of the CPI in 2017. However, the reduction in the VAT rate from 15% to 12.5% in February 2017 contributed to the moderation of these inflationary pressures. The fact is that the prices that he's indicating went up, that by record and in the Social and Economic Review, is false. And I'm asking him to please either provide proof or to withdraw the statement.
Honorable, Honorable, if I recall, Honorable Prime Minister, if I recall that what the leader of the opposition said, he said in my mind that there would have been, the reduction in the VAT did not result in a reduction of goods. Yeah. This is, honestly, Mr. Prime Minister, this one is hard to rule on because based on the information you so read, does not to me dispute what he's saying, that that there was not a reduction in the price of goods.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to help you here a little bit. But if in fact the price of imported products outside of St. Lucia, which showed increases in inflation, were imported into St. Lucia, and despite those increases and the increase in the price of gas, that the CPI index reduced, then you have to, by deduction, understand that there was no price in the cost of the food. So it's a false statement, and I would like him to withdraw it.
Honourable Prime Minister, I beg to disagree with you there. I beg you to disagree. But we could deal with that some other time. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister displays a tendency to live in the moment, a value proposition that allows him to say whatever is expedient at the time without any regard to the future implications of his pronouncements. Mr. Speaker, our CIP program has not been successful.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, again, it may be if you will not take my word for it, maybe you will take the word of the Social Economic Review. On page 48, as it continues, it says counterbalancing these upward movements.
Mr. Prime Minister, please,
basket.
for the record purposes, can you put back or put your no. I'm just saying, put your objection.
My objection, Mr. Speaker, is that I've asked for the statement to be withdrawn. You've indicated that there was insufficient evidence in what my statement and what I quoted to give you the satisfaction for him to withdraw it. I am now reading further on the same page in order to give you the clarity that you need. It says, counterbalancing these upwards movements in the CPI basket were reductions in all subsidies. Notably, the index for food and non-alcoholic beverages, where accounts for the largest share of the CPI basket, declined by 0.9%.
For the record purposes, Mr. Prime Minister, so noted. And I will so read and get a copy of what you've so indicated. My issue is that there's nothing wrong with an index coming down, but does that automatically reflect? That is just, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying that is a stretch to me, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you are wrong, Mr. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is not my word.
Oh,
I'm reading from the Economic and Social Review.
Mr. Prime Minister,
it
I'm
says
not
that
challenging
the index for food and non-alcoholic beverages, which accounts for the largest share of the CPI, declined by 0.9%. This reflected lower prices of milk, cheese, processed fruit-based products, mineral water, and soft drinks. Alcoholic beverages and tobacco declined by 0.5%, result of a 3% decline in the price of spirits. So
Honourable Prime Minister,
the specifics of what he said, where he said that food prices went up because we reduced the price of VAT, is incorrect, and I would like him to withdraw it.
Mr. Prime Minister, but then, Mr. Prime Minister, that's not what he said. He did not say because of reduction it went up. We're not going to go back and forth on that. But that's not what he said. He did not say because it went down, food prices went up. That's not my understanding of what he said. That's not what my understanding. I have no issue with what you put in before this House, that the price index came down. This may have resulted, but honourable members, gallery, I don't have an issue with that. That's not the issue. My issue here is because the index went down, am I supposed to just stretch it based on what you said that the index went down by whatever percentage, that I'm supposed to just stretch it and say that the value of goods went down? I've so noted what he said, and again, I've so noted your objection, and it will be so reflected, but I cannot just simply tell him, withdraw the statement on the basis that the index saying that the prices of food or the index went down.
But, Mr. Speaker, the document is being very clear. It's not just saying that the price of index went down. It is saying specifically on food items and beverage items that the items went down. So I'm not so sure how you're interpreting it any different, Mr. Speaker. Honestly, this is very specific by the Economics and Social Review that in the 2017, the year that the VAT rate went down, so did the price of the basket of food products. End of story. And it says it specifically.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Prime Minister, can you read the items that you said that went down? No, the prices of the goods you said that went down.
Lower prices of milk, cheese.
Please stand, please, and the mic, please.
Notably, index for food and non-alcoholic beverages, which accounts for the largest share of the CPI basket, declined by 0.9%. That's the whole basket of food items and beverage items. This reflected lower prices of milk, cheese, processed fruit-based products, mineral water, and soft drinks.
Let's just replay it. Milk, cheese.
Sir, it says that all food items came down as a basket of goods, and all. And this reflected, it came down by 0.9%. And this reflected lower prices specifically of milk, cheese, processed fruit-based products, mineral water, and soft drinks. Alcoholic beverages and tobacco declined by 0.5% as a result of the 3% decline in the price of spirits. Household furnishings also came down. What I'm saying specifically on food items is what the Leader of the Opposition mentioned. It's clear in the Economic Review that those rates came down.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I've asked the Prime Minister to be so specific so you could understand or hear the items as so listed in the Economic and Social Review that came down. Your statement was a broad-based statement which covered all food items, as you said, but the Prime Minister reading from the Social and Economic Review was specific.
Doesn't go to the supermarket, the people do.
Mr. Honorable Leader of the Opposition,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I want you to note
Yes.
what the Prime Minister said.
I've noted, Mr. Speaker, but I know lentils went up, I know chicken went up.
No. I want you to note, listen to me, of the specific item. You could remain standing, I'm speaking directly to you. That the specific item went down, notably, according to what he read, milk, cheese, processed food, mineral water, and soft drinks and spirits. So noted? Very well. Went up. Continue, sir.
And lentils and chicken went up. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister displays a tendency to live in the moment, a value proposition that allows him to say whatever is expedient at the time without any regard to the future implications of his pronouncements. Mr. Speaker, the CIP program has not been successful because of some statements made by the Minister of Finance before he held his current office. On March 21st, 2016, the leader of the United Workers' Party wrote a letter to the president of the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association claiming, and I quote, "The Labour Party is in control of the program, and as such, it loses all credibility and free from political interference." That was a letter written by the leader of the United Workers' Party on the 21st of March 2016. From the moment of
Mr.
this
Speaker,
act of
again,
irresponsibility,
I rise on
Honorable,
order.
what's the point? What's the point of order?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
What's the point of
Honorable
order?
Leader of the
What
Opposition.
is the point of
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Okay? The letter...
Just hold on. Honorable Lady Ancillary Canries. Please, sir, please allow me to perform my duty. Honorable member for, or Honorable Prime Minister, please continue, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, that's not in fact what the letter said. The letter said that the member who is now currently the member of Castries South, who had previously been the High Commissioner in England, who was caught up in the Jufalia affair, had now assumed...
Are you indicating, because you didn't indicate your point of order, are you indicating it is misleading the House?
Yes, I did say he's misleading the
okay,
House.
sorry about it.
Okay?
Continue.
And I'm getting a point of clarification. Yeah. And what the letter said is that because he was that High Commissioner during that period, and also because most people suspected that he was going to be running in the next elections, that he should not be the chairman of the CIP program. That is what the letter did. And the letter asked for his resignation.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is misleading the House in a way that is bold-faced and open. I have the letter, Mr. Speaker, I have the letter. I have the letter. I have the letter. Don't test me. Page, I read what I want.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, honorable members. We have an issue, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. You've made a statement, Honorable Prime Minister is refuting, or is saying to me that, or to the House, that you are misleading the House. You claim that you have a letter. Very well. You cannot say that you're just going to read whatever you feel like. You cannot say that. Because you may very well, by just quoting that part of your letter, you may very well yourself be misleading the House. So be careful. I'm not telling you don't read part or, but be careful. I want you to make that clear. So if you're going to make this document available to me so that I could properly rule on it, then I have no issue with that. All right? But it is. Okay. All right. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, let me see. Is this a matter that is before the courts?
Here's what. Let's make it clear, Mr. Speaker. I am saying that the Honorable Prime Minister, when he was the leader of the United Workers' Party, he caused and created doubt in the CIP program. That's my position. And I'm saying that because...
I will leave it at that.
Yes.
If this matter is before the court and this letter is a subject or evidence in the court for the time being, I will leave it as that.
Okay.
Okay? So let's not go beyond that.
Thank you.
All right. Go on.
From the moment of this act of irresponsibility, the eyes of the world were on our CIP program. That is the same Prime Minister, when he was given responsibility for the CIP, changed the entire ethos of the program. He reduced the price and altered the due diligence processes. By his hasty actions, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has caused the country to lose millions of dollars of revenue.
Point of order again, that the member is trying to...
What's the point of order?
Yes, let's get to it.
He's trying to mislead the House.
Oh, Honorable Prime Minister, is he trying to or is he misleading?
I leave the definition to you.
If he's trying to, he's not misleading.
Okay, he has misled the House, Mr. Speaker. He has said that we mended the regulations in terms of reviewing the due diligence. No changes were made to the due diligence. In fact, when we came here to this honorable House, we made that point. All we did was change the prices to reflect the competitive nature of the sector. But no changes. In fact, if anything, we increased the level of due diligence as it pertains to the approvals.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you heard the Honorable Prime Minister.
Take
note according.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But what I know, Mr. Speaker, is when the Honorable Prime Minister inherited the CIP program. There was a requirement that each investor must have a $3 million net worth, and he removed it. There were other requirements. He reduced the price of the CIP program, of the passport. He reduced it. So the point I'm making is by removing the requirement that the investor must be of a certain net worth, to my mind, is a reduction in the due diligence process.
Okay, Mr. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, if you're spelling it that way, please do so continuously to indicate that according to your opinion or according to your mind. Continue, sir.
Mr. Speaker, on May 24th, 2017, the Minister of Finance declared that he was spending $4 million of taxpayers' money on fixing up a call center for a foreign firm, Ojo Labs. We also understood that the government was paying part of the wages of that firm. The firm has also received from the government general tax concessions. To this day, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has not informed or provided the taxpayers of this country with a proper accounting of how much of the state's funds have been spent on Ojo Labs. How much of the state funds have been spent in terms of retrofitting, in terms of wages, how much exactly has been spent on Ojo Labs? Member for Choiseul, you are a banker. Are you satisfied with that level of accountability?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you always speak through me.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Choiseul is a banker. Is he satisfied with the level of accountability being demonstrated by his Minister of Finance? How would he like to be remembered as a parliamentary representative of the people? Mr. Speaker, is he prepared to put his country before himself? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's decision to put the country in $270 million worth of debt to construct a terminal building at the Hiwanora International Airport without even knowing the total cost of the project is grossly irresponsible and reckless. The project is doomed to run into financial difficulty and is unlikely, in my opinion, to be completed in a timely manner. To add insult to injury, the Minister of Finance uses what President George Bush called fuzzy maths and flawed assumptions to justify his decision. Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that St. Lucia is the only country in recent times that has embarked upon using loans to fund airport development. St. Lucia is the only country in recent times that has used loans to fund airport development. Airport construction is a complex matter and has a history of being plagued with issues of procurement and corruption. The government-funded Guyana Airport is a case in point, and so is the Piarco International Airport in Trinidad, where accusations of corruption led to the intervention of the U.S. government in Trinidad. Up to today, there are people in Trinidad who are waiting because of corruption in the construction of the Piarco International Airport to be extradited to the United States for corruption in the construction of the Piarco International Airport. What does the St. Lucia Minister of Finance know that other governments do not know? Contrastingly, the Jamaica government followed the public-private partnership model. The exact model negotiated for St. Lucia is being followed by the Jamaica government. The Barbados government is following the same PPP model. The government of Great Britain is, in fact, has sold its airports.
Speaker, The member is misleading the House again. Barbados' airport
Honorable
was
Leader of the Opposition.
was built by the Barbados government. The PPP that Jamaica is entering into is after the airports have been corrected. Please, if you're going to make the quotes,
But he
Mr. Speaker, he
there.
needs to be able to get
He
his
will
facts
know it's not a
straight.
new airport.
Barbados' airport was built by the Barbados government.
You testing me again?
And they are now considering going into a PPP, but it's owned by the government of Barbados.
You testing me again?
Honorable members, I know that, honorable members, I know there's some topics in this House which brings out a lot of debate and emotions. And as the honorable member for Grizzly so reminded me earlier, we shall not because we here, we shall not reopen debates. So I would like honorable members to so take note of all that. Honorable Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I will not deal with the insights into the PPP agreement with the Barbados, with the government of Jamaica. I will not deal with that in a moment. Mr. Speaker, the minister's justification for the availability of funds in going with borrowing $270 million is that there are funds available from an airport development tax. Mr. Speaker, it is this type of financial naivety that is a source of worry and may well account for his behavior in handling the state funds. Life is not that simple. If it was so easy to collect billions of dollars as proclaimed by the minister, then larger countries with greater visitor arrivals, with larger airports, with more people coming to the airports, would have just borrowed money to build the airport and collect airport development taxes. If it was that simple, if it is as simple as it said, all these countries would have done the same thing. Mr. Speaker, is the Minister of Finance's failure to understand the dangers of increasing the country's debt is shocking, and it's enough. And I call on members.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, the member is reopening a debate. The money came here, the money bill, the motion came to the House, was debated at length as to the funding from the Taiwanese government for the airport project. The member is reopening a debate that has already taken place in this House.
Honorable Leader, please, yes. Are you for honorable member for?
So the member need to cease along that line. Debates that have been done in this House cannot be reopened.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I so ruled earlier, also made reference to that point, and I then highlighted that our good member friend from Rosalie so indicated that to us much earlier. So reference can be indicated, but we're not reopening the debate. Okay? Very well.
I am not reopening the debate, Mr. Speaker. I am just speaking about the borrowing of $270 million with more to come, whereas it could be avoided. And I'm using as an example the borrowing for the Hiwanura International Airport. I'm not reopening the debate. I'm speaking about the borrowing that could be avoided. Mr. Speaker, the airport development project has been a long-time mission yet to be accomplished. Its inception goes back to the United Workers' Party administration. It has been plagued with difficulties and allegations of corruption from the onset.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order.
Yes,
How is that not reopening the debate, Mr. Speaker?
Honorable Member for Castro South East, I am so paying attention. So I will so roll if I believe it's crossing that line. Continue, let me so know. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, continue, sir.
has been plagued with difficulties and allegations of corruption from the onset. The then bank denied the loan to finance the project, even if the airport departure tax was being collected. The bank denied the loan even if the airport departure tax was being collected. The loan was denied.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, now I'm going to interject now. And we're starting to rehash all the back and forth we did then. I have no issue with you talking about HIA, whether it is higher development and you have issues with it, but when you start going into specifics of the project, which were the things that we highlighted and we rehash right here, I don't have an issue with you. Like I've said, I don't have an issue with you referencing anything. Continue. Just so take note, please.
Mr. Speaker, the UWP failed to commence construction of the airport, even with the airport departure tax. Mr. Speaker, there were allegations of bribery. And up to this day, there has been no civil litigation taken against the person who made these accusations. There was also the disclosure of a 4% finder's fee for the contractor. All these were elements of the Hiwanora Airport development. And we are back with some of the identical players, but this time we have used diplomatic muscle to secure a loan from the government of Taiwan. Mr. Speaker, it is difficult to imagine that the government is embarking on the largest infrastructural project in the island.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 35-1.
Once a point of order is raised, you need to say it. And,
could the honourable member limit his discussion on the motion? The motion is no confidence in the Prime Minister Alan Shasney. He's bringing the government into the picture. Is it a motion of no confidence against the government or the Prime Minister Alan Shasney? You're now talking about UWP, you're now talking about government. Be specific, Mr. The honourable member is going all over the place.
So continue.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is becoming a politician.
Honourable members, continue.
He's becoming a politician, Mr. Speaker. He's been under so much pressure for him not being a politician. He's become a politician. Welcome to the world of politics, sir. Mr. Speaker, it is difficult to imagine that the government led by the Prime Minister is embarking on the largest infrastructural project in the island, and St. Lucian business people have no chance of tendering for the project. No one, except selected people and their friends, family, and foreigners, have any idea of how the contractor was selected. What Minister of Finance would be comfortable endorsing such a decision? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister endorsed the stopping of a fully transparent process endorsed by the World Bank, from which he is now borrowing money. And there were other options open for development. The Canadian government option was never considered.
Mr. Speaker, I stand again on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, that is an entire debate on the budget that was conducted here in this honorable house. I mean, the honorable member for Castries East and leader of the opposition understands the standing orders, but is pushing the point, Mr. Speaker, because no matter what it is, this is an open debate on a bill that has been passed in this honorable house, where every member of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, had every opportunity to debate. They debated, they lost the debate. The motion was passed, And the honorable member is reopening the same debate, Mr. Speaker. And it looks like he's given the latitude to bring a past debate that will have to be responded to, Mr. Speaker. And that is going to cause a problem, because when other members will come now and reopen debates on other things that have transpired, then, Mr. Speaker, we will end up in a problem. So the member should withdraw the debate that he is having on the airport.
Honorable members, honorable members. Honorable members, I have honorable members, like I've said before, I'm not coming down, but be careful that you may say something that cause me to come down. Members, it is difficult considering the motion before the House. And I know 45.3 what it says. And I'm going to be as measured as I possibly can, because honorable member for Castries South East. Honorable member for Castries South East. Good sir, you cannot move for a motion, stand on the point of order and make the submission and just, oh, he went for his back, okay. So I just wanted to indicate that to you. You cannot make the submission and then you just step outside. I will be so measured. There's some latitude because of the motion. That some latitude has to be given, and so it will be given. I try to be fair, like I've said in the beginning, to both sides, and that will be done. I will again caution the leader of the opposition to be measured into how far he goes into the debate, into discussion on HIA. But I will so note that when you do come to speak, if you so choose to, that I will try to be as fair to you as I am being at this present time. Continue, leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm finished on the HIA. I just want to say three things. One, the government borrowed $270 million to build an airport. To build an airport when there was a PPP arrangement that they could have done it without borrowing. And two, there was no tender in the process. There was no tendering in the choosing of the selector, of the contractor. And number three, the former United Workers' Party government, when they were trying to build the airport, it was plagued with difficulty and allegations. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is the first among equals in the cabinet. He's expected to show leadership, but for whatever reasons, he has allowed certain ministers to lead him. The question is, why? The Prime Minister exercised poor judgment and continues to do so over the St. Jude Hospital debacle. No caring minister, let alone a Prime Minister, should have permitted the stoppage of works at St. Jude's Hospital for 30 months without an alternative plan in place. For 30 months. The patients and medical practitioners continue to suffer from the conditions at the George Odlum Stadium. The Prime Minister appears not to care, and is comfortable in just ascribing blame to previous administrations. You all were there, you all didn't do it. You all were there, you all didn't do it. Only now. And you leave it for 30 months, and you ascribe blame to past administration. Never mind that he served as a minister in the administration that started the St. Jude's project. Is it that he did not care then and therefore does not care now? In the same way, one would assess a country by the way it treats its vulnerable in its midst. So it is when assessing a prime minister. What is the prime minister's empathy for the sick and vulnerable in our midst? Well, the evidence clearly shows that the sick are a low priority, and therefore little is done in alleviating their sufferings, the sufferings of the people in Blanchard, in Mon Repos, who have to go to St. Jude's Hospital. Meanwhile, a few yards away from the George Odlum makeshift hospital, the Prime Minister is gung-ho on a racetrack, on completing $1 million racetrack. He is gung-ho on completion, whilst the people of this country continue to receive medical in the George Odlum Stadium.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry that I need to raise on a point of order again. Mr. Speaker, this time I would like to support my point of order by making...
Honorable, I will so entertain you. Can we do it after?
After what?
I will so come back to that
no,
point.
But Mr.
I will
Speaker,
so
you've asked me to get some evidence.
Yes, I know. I'm not going to deny you that opportunity to so present it. Sure. I'm not going to. Sure. I'm just trying to get this out of the way, and therefore we could deal with any other thing arising therefrom. Sure. That's all, sir.
No problem, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Leader, please continue.
The OKU hospital, by now, should have been operational. Again, rather than placing the health of the nation, he is busy blaming past administrations and making deals with foreign entities to privatize the OKU, whilst he blames.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, the member is imputing improper motive by using the term the Prime Minister is making deals with people. That is very subjective and can mean a lot of things. So, Mr. Speaker, that is a statement that is imputing improper motive to the Prime Minister.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I will say to you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, that I know you're fully capable of using the right words. Although that at the time I was allowing you to sow, but I would like you to take note, because it registered in my mind that depending on how far you go with that, the follow-up with that statement, I may have had to interject. So now that it is done early, I will ask you to so note and proceed accordingly. So be careful.
Speaker, there are good deals and bad deals. The Prime Minister will be negotiating a good deal. Any private arrangements would only be likely to provide healthcare access to those who can afford and not those who need it. Mr. Speaker, our people, especially the vulnerable among us, deserve better as far as healthcare is concerned. Mr. Speaker, Abraham Lincoln was so right when he said, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. The member for Miku South has been subject to this character test since he has become Prime Minister.
Honorable, I was about to tell you the motion is not against the member for Miku South, but you so indicated early enough that to indicate Prime Minister. So continue, sir. Remember, the motion is against the Prime Minister, not the member for Miku South.
To my mind, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my mind, the Prime Minister has been subject to this character test. Sadly, to my mind, he continues to demonstrate all characteristics that we do not want as a leader. In my opinion, he has chosen arbitrariness over fairness. He has chosen selfishness over selflessness. He has chosen vindictiveness over forgiveness. He has chosen arrogance over humility. This is the testimony
Mr. Speaker, on a point
of
of
the
order.
800 nice workers.
Honorable Leader. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I'm at pains to sit here and listen to the standing orders of this Honorable House be trampled on over and over again. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the statements that are being made imputing improper motives. I know in an earlier intervention you overruled. And I suspect that that has given latitude to the member to just go on and on and on. There must be a limit to that kind of abuse of the rules of the House. Mr. Speaker, I can sit here as an honorable member and realize and know that we are breaching the rule, we are violating the standing orders.
Honorable member, honorable member, I don't have
and
an
Mr.
issue.
Speaker, I think you...
No, I'm getting to you.
I know you're having a bad day, Mr. Speaker, today, don't make it worse.
No. Honorable member, honorable member, you're a senior member of this House, so be careful with the words that you so use. Be careful with the words that you so use, honorable member. But let me say this to you. Addressing me directly. Let me say this to you.
Go ahead, sir.
The connotations of words we use may differ between myself and you, or any other member in this House.
But Mr. Speaker,
it may very well differ to any other member in this House.
Yeah.
Now, I am sitting here with a listening ear to see how far the leader of the opposition will go with the descriptive of words used to describe what he believes. And he has said it in such a way, what he believes is a result of the actions, alleged actions of the Prime Minister.
Yes, and
that's what he said.
And I'm standing here, Mr. Speaker, wondering how much further it will go before we accept that the rules have been breached.
It is, Mr.
Honorable
Member.
When a member can stand before this Honorable House and accuse another member of being vindictive and all the other descriptive...
Honorable Member, I have not heard that word used for today.
I beg your pardon? It was just...
Listen.
Well, I knew... well, thank you.
Listen, listen to this.
Listen
Listen to this.
I feel relieved that you did not hear it. Now I understand why the latitude...
Honorable Member, please take your seat for the time, then. Take your seat for the time.
Thank you.
Honorable Leader, please continue, sir.
Honorable Speaker, on a point of order, misleading the House. And it has been said here before, and I'm going to repeat it, that no nice workers were fired. Their contract came to an end, and it was not renewed. So to say to the Honorable House that they were fired is misleading the House.
This was the action of the 800 nice
Honorable
workers.
Leader of the Opposition, I must rule. A point of order was raised. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, we've been down this road before. We've been down this road before, and honorable members should really know. And there are some things that are said in this House, whether it is for exaggeration purposes or not. But some things are said in this House, and some things are permitted to be said. And if every time that we go into rule on every single phrase or word used, then we shall not do work in this House. But Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please take note. So it has been repeatedly said in this House that the nice workers were not fired, meaning the termination was not done as a deliberate, or not deliberate, but as an intentional act, but that the employment came to an end as a result of the contract they once had. And therefore, the contract came to an end automatically, and that nobody had to take the decision to terminate anybody's contract. So note, sir, and please refrain from referring to it as being they were fired.
I so note, Mr. Speaker, and that's the testimony of the 800 nice workers who were relieved on their contracts and were no longer employed.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you did not hear what I said to you.
Dismissal means you don't renew a contract and you send them away. That's what
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you didn't listen to what I said. Honorable members, Honorable Leader Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Again, I have said to you, I would like that part, the last part about they being relieved, be withdrawn. I'll tell you, and I'll repeat it again, that, and it has repeatedly said here, and we've all accepted, that the contract, they were on contract, and the contract based on the terms automatically came to an end. Now, if you want to rephrase that, I have no issue, but do not ascribe to to the government or members of the government or the Prime Minister, since the motion is to the Prime Minister, that he did an intentional act to terminate the contracts. So there's a little, so I would like you to withdraw the words and relieve from the contracts, something like that, to that effect.
How much, Mr. Speaker?
You, like I said earlier, you fully have the ability to rephrase your words. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I withdraw. I humbly withdraw. And I say the 800 nice workers, their contracts were no longer renewed. And by that action of not renewing their contracts, they are no longer at work.
That's one definition of dismissal.
And the reason for the contracts not being renewed and they're no longer at work, because it was perceived that in the beginning, 75% of them were supporters of the Labour Party. But on reflection, it was said that 90% of them were supporters of the Labour Party, so their contracts were not renewed and they are no longer working. Mr. Speaker, the National Trust for disagreeing with him, the fire victims who could not afford insurance, a grade 5 civil servant from the ministry, a grade 5 civil servant fired because it was perceived he was of a different political color, and many people who have suffered from when they have called out the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, the member is saying that a grade 5 worker was fired by the Prime Minister? Or is he insinuating? Mr. Speaker, I don't know how long you're going to allow this to go on. But Mr. Speaker, what is going on there is beyond my own understanding of anything pertaining to this House. I didn't know that any minister could fire anybody, and the member for Castries East, as a senior member in this chamber, is standing here and saying that a grade 5 public servant was fired by the Prime Minister? But that is what he's saying. The motion...
Honorable members, allow the member for Castries South East to make his submission.
Mr. Speaker, the motion made by the honorable member for Castries East is a motion against the Prime Minister. And that is what he highlighted. He has been highlighting the areas he thinks that the Prime Minister should not be Prime Minister. And he's highlighting that a member of the public service who can only be terminated by the Public Service Commission, not by the Prime Minister, appointed by them, and we have not been able to change the Public Service Commission. So, Mr. Speaker, the member for Castries East needs to withdraw and refrain. I mean, I have seen a lot of latitude given in this House, but I've never seen so much. But
honorable member, honorable member, honorable member, honorable member, honorable members, honorable members, The control and conduct, honorable members, the control and conduct of proceedings in this House. Honorable Member for Castro Southeast, please allow me to make my ruling. The control of proceedings in this House, whether you like it or not, is within my domain. Okay? Leader of the opposition. The statement made is that you are indicating to this House that the Prime Minister fired a grade 5 public servant. That's the allegation being made here. Let us now so that being the allegation is a very serious one to say or to allege that the Prime Minister came down from that office down to grade 5 and so fired somebody.
Mr.
Now,
Speaker.
If you go in that way, sir, you need to substantiate such an allegation. Word of mouth, sir. Please take note accordingly, sir. Let's refrain from just making allegations just because we believe it may have some political benefits to us all.
Mr. Speaker, I would not like to go down that track, but if the minister insists that I go down that track, and if you give me 20 minutes, I will go to my office and I will bring you a document, 2 documents, where a grade 5 worker in the Ministry of Transport was fired after his contract was renewed 2 days after he was fired in the Ministry of Transport, and the Prime Minister is the head of the cabinet. So if you want to go there, I can go there, Mr. Speaker. But I'd rather not go there because what I'm saying to you is that the Prime Minister is head of the cabinet and a grade 5 worker in the Ministry of Transport was dismissed because of his perceived political color.
I understand. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Now, I have no issue you saying it. If you say it that way, make a general statement to that effect. Somebody was fired, and if you can say that the decision was made by cabinet, you could make it. But when you're going to make the statement to make it look like it's the Prime Minister who took that decision, you may just be stretching it too far.
Okay. All right, Mr. Speaker. No. The Prime Minister did not make the decision.
No.
He didn't make it.
No. To take it and move it way beyond the people that we know, because we all know who are responsible for such decisions, to take it from them and to just ascribe it to the cabinet may very well be wrong too.
That grade 5 worker.
Okay. Let me finish. So all I'm saying to you, I have no issue, and I will repeat it, that you're capable of saying what you want to say with words that will not ascribe or indicate that anyone particular did something if you cannot substantiate it. I know you're capable of doing it. So I'm saying to you, do not equate the two. He was relieved, he was relieved. He was fired, say that. But do not take it to say that it was the Prime Minister who did it.
Okay,
if you cannot show that link.
I withdraw.
Okay,
it wasn't the Prime Minister who did it, but the civil servant was working in the Ministry of Transport. He had a contract. The contract was signed by the Permanent Secretary, and that contract was, to use a famous word, was not renewed. The contract was renewed, and then 2 days after, the contract was terminated on a clause in the contract because it was said that, one, the worker lived in Independent City.
Honorable member, let's move on from that particular issue.
Mr. Speaker, permit me to ask members opposites. Permit me to ask members opposites, individually and collectively. Are you in agreement with the failure to complete St. Jude Hospital after 30 months? Are you in agreement with the proposed destruction of the newly completed meat processing facility for a horse racing track? Are you in agreement with discrediting the work done at St. Jude Hospital prior to 2011? Are you in agreement with outsourcing health services to a private entity? Are you in agreement with the neglect of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College? Are you in agreement with the loss of millions of dollars of state funds over the ill-fated range development project after constant warnings of impending failure? Are you in agreement with the arbitrary halting of projects such as the Soufre Square, the Castries to Grosley Highway, the Viewford Administrative Building, and the North-South Link Road? Are you in agreement with the constant attacks on the Medical and Dental Association, engineers, and other professionals for expressing a contrary view to that of the Prime Minister? Are you in agreement with the leasing of 1,000 acres of land in Viewfort? Are you in agreement with the leasing of 1,000 acres of land in Viewfort, some of it for as little as 99 cents to a foreign friend? Are you in agreement with the multi-million-dollar contracts being awarded without tender? Are you in agreement? And if you are, you must support this vote of confidence. If you are in agreement, you must not support this vote of confidence. But if you are in agreement, you must put your country before yourself, and what you will say in private, you must say in public. Mr. Speaker, a Prime Minister should have a sacred duty to the people. The wants of friends, family, and foreigners must not override those of the poor, vulnerable, and marginalized. Our country cannot prosper if there is victimization, corruption, rampant disregard for the rule of law, and reckless use of the financial and other assets of the country. Mr. Speaker, we must take the necessary steps to return St. Lucia to a path of financial stability and growth for all its people. Mr. Speaker, the case against this Prime Minister and Minister of Finance is overwhelming. St. Lucia needs to be rescued from his leadership of the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. I close my case. Some of us knew, some needed time, but now all of us know that the Prime Minister, in the conduct of the business of the country, is uncaring. I therefore call upon members of this House to do the right thing and support this motion before us by voting yes. Those who don't will be remembered as placing self-interest above country, and such is the weight of evidence that is being presented today against this Prime Minister. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that this Honorable House expresses its total lack of confidence in the leadership of the Honorable Alan M. Shastny, and be it further resolved that this Honorable House calls for the immediate resignation of the Honorable Alan M. Shastny as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, can you please turn on off your mic? Honorable members, I think the time is appropriate at this time for us to take lunch. And then when we resume, we shall so proceed. So, Honorable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I beg that we suspend the House for 1 hour and return at 3 o'clock.
Honorable members, the question is that this House stands suspended until 3 in the forenoon. I now put a question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. House is suspended for lunch.
Well, you've been viewing what has been a very animated House of Assembly today. Although there were bills and statements tabled, it was a motion of no confidence in the leadership of the Prime Minister tabled by the Leader of the Opposition that generated much of the debate. However, the Speaker called for a suspension of the House for lunch just before the motion could have been debated by the other parliamentarians. The House resumes at 3, so please stay tuned to the National Television Network for a resumption of the House of Assembly when the motion before the House will be no confidence in the leadership of the Prime Minister. Thanks for watching.